Hi guys, welcome to THI. I'm your host, Rose, and this is a space where we can be confident, bold, and honest. On today's topic, we are going to be talking about the truth nobody warned me about. In this life, we are taught how to dream, how to hope, how to survive, but no one teaches you what to do when life doesn't go the way we planned. No one warned me about the grief that comes with growth or the loneliness that follows with self-respect. This is the truth that nobody warned me about and a conversation that we all need to have. Growth and change within ourselves. The first concept that we're going to be talking about is in the sense of relationships. And this can look like relationships with your family, extended relationships with your friends, social relationships, and how they impact us. So to begin with, as we navigate in life, when we're in school, we're fed this fairy tale. Society feeds us this idea of what our relationships are supposed to look like. And you feel, I'm going to grow old with these people. You know, the classic fairy tales that we all have. They're going to be my friends forever. We're going to have children and our children are going to be friends. But we eventually find out that that's actually not how life goes. People grow every single day and people change. And that change comes with indifference. And when the indifference arises, you realize that these people don't actually fit your certain reality anymore. Or sometimes it might not even be them. Sometimes it might be you. They might outgrow you and your behaviors. And this can honestly impact a lot of people's mental health sometimes. Life genuinely, for me personally, I feel like the older you get, life does sense to get a bit lonely, but not in the sense of there's not a lot of people around. But I think we gravitate towards an idea of closeness and people who actually, reflect us. And so as we grow, we start to realize certain people in our lives just don't fit in there anymore. And, it can be a hard thing to navigate, but you just have to go through it. Now, another aspect of it is within yourself. There's a lot of changes that arise. I would say like in your 20s, you think you've got it all figured out and then life happens. We are constantly changing. Society's constantly evolving and you're honestly constantly having to improve on yourself. And with that comes a lot of pressure. And the pressure can be external factors or internal factors. Pressure that you put on yourself, or it could be pressure that family put on you. For example, I would say in an aspect of an African household, there's certain pressures that they expect on like an older child, males or females. There's a lot of expectations. And sometimes when those things clash, it can feel like life is falling apart, or when a lot of things don't go the way we want. It gets to a certain point where you're like, oh my God, like I'm actually having a midlife crisis. And it can be really hard because nobody talks about, the grief of grieving a life that you thought you could have, or like what you thought you would be at a certain point in your life. I think we all get to a certain age where we think, by this age, I might be married and I'll have kids and I'll have this. And when it doesn't I'll have this house, I'll have this job. And when it doesn't turn out that way, it can genuinely feel like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Or sometimes we get to a certain point for a lot of overachievers. For me personally, I would consider myself as somebody that's an overachiever. And because for various reasons, I put a lot of pressure on myself when I'm not where I want to be. And because of that pressure, it starts to feel like my reality is a cage. And a lot of people feel this usually in the aspect of like, I would say people that are aspiring to live a certain type of lifestyle and their realities don't fit that. It can be like a clash. There's a clash there of your identity and what your actual reality is at the time. Another aspect that we're going to talk about is your environment. A lot of things change, with change and growth, mentally, physically, you can't remain in the same place. And that saying where they say you cannot remain in an environment that hurts you. It doesn't even have to be an environment that actually hurts you. But that saying, for example, when you outgrow a place mentally, naturally your body needs to follow. And it can really start to feel like, what am I doing here? And that's how I felt when I was still living in my hometown, seeing the same people. I love my hometown. That's where I grew up and my whole family's there and everybody that I've known. But I think I reached a certain point in my life where it's like the things that I was looking for, my hometown couldn't give me. And also there was a sense of comfort. I was so comfortable being there. I knew everywhere. I knew the people. There's no challenges. I didn't feel like I was being challenged. And sometimes you have to make the difficult choice to improve your life, to be able to put yourself in a space where you can actually see different. You need to leave. The body needs to follow. You need to be out. And that can even be challenging within itself, you know? So I think when we go through all these different, and imagine all these things, your relationships, yourself and your environment, these are all concepts that you're feeling all at once. It genuinely starts to feel like, oh my God, take me out the game completely. Take me out completely. But we have to get through it. You genuinely have to thug it out and keep on pushing, even when it genuinely feels like, God, what am I doing this for? We have to keep pushing, and with life, it's not a book that we all understand. You think you know everything and it's going to go a certain type of way, but nobody, like you cannot stop the obstacles that come with life. You can't stop it. And you can't even go around it. You must go through it. And we see this because it's like, I think there's a lot of people who are not really willing to face life's challenges sometimes. And they feel like, I don't want to face it. And not facing it can lead to things. That's why you see people, maybe they're drinking alcohol, substance abuse, bad mental health issues. You genuinely have to face the grief of yourself, the grief of your environment, the grief of your relationships, to be able to elevate to the next level and the next chapter of your life. And that in itself can be very hard and very challenging in a world that's trying to convince us who we are. Another aspect of it that I want to talk about is the importance of knowing yourself. We are in a world that is constantly evolving and constantly trying to convince us. We're really living in the fast life and in the digital world right now. There's so many factors to it, so many influences, especially I would say on social media. There's this whole ideology of like get rich schemes. And so it's like a lot of people have this, I need to get rich tomorrow. And I'm not going to lie, I was one of those types of people. So when my life didn't go the way that I planned, I used to think, you know what, by 24, I'm going to be loaded. I'm going to have kids. Oh God, what a story. Because it's like, bro, please. I couldn't even imagine myself at that stage right now. I'm the baby in my life. I need to regulate my own mental state. I couldn't imagine regulating another. Can you imagine being sad and depressed and there's a baby talking about where? Sorry. Absolutely not. You know? And to say that, it's not even in a sense of, it's not even in a sense that that's the wrong thing. For some people, it is the right path, and that's their path. For each person, their journey is individual and looks completely different. But it's all about taking it slow, not taking no shortcuts, facing the things, the obstacles that life throws at you, and still maintaining a level of resilience. All these things that happen to us are the biggest character development. You know, sometimes I'm like, God, I beg, please, why am I in the front lines this year again? But I feel like every obstacle that I've ever been through in my life has prepared me so much. And every adversity, anything has prepared me for where I am today. And now I look at it from a point of view. Every time that a challenge arises in my life, I look at it from a state of mind of what could this be teaching me? For example, betrayal. When I feel betrayed, I have two state of minds: spite. What made this person think they can do this to me? And now I feel like I have to get my lick back and I have to be better than you. And then another obstacle of it is like, what about me allowed that? Was I not strong on my boundaries? There's always learning opportunities in adversities or in challenges. It's all about frame of mind and how we look at it. And when you're in a state where you're not genuinely regulating and not doing the self-work to understand that, it can make life a whole lot more challenging. So with all that being said, there is definitely growth in adversities and challenges in our lives. And that sense of loneliness and grief that you feel during those times actually does shape you and allows you to elevate. And I know it can be hard because even for me at the time, when you're going through something, you're just viewing yourself from a place of survival and from a place of a victim mindset. You don't actually see the light outside of the tunnel until you're at that light. But it's very important that you continue, because I continued. And when I continued, I saw how much life improved. And it was all based on a mindset shift. I started viewing myself not as a victim anymore. And I understood. And honestly, when I viewed my life that way, I felt like I used my adversities to my best advantages. I used them as learning opportunities. The best thing that I ever did for myself was everything that I had invested outwards, I invested it back internally. I ensured that I spent time on myself. And people, I feel like we glamorize this. It's not just in an aspect of taking care of yourself and all the materialistic things of just looking good, but actually taking care of yourself internally. This could look like working out, going to the gym, doing shadow work, actually addressing all those years of traumas. What about me allows me to have weak boundaries for those things to be crossed? Why do I have abandonment issues? Why do I have all these internalized attachments? When you spend that time, everything that you give outwards, when you pour it back into yourself, life slowly starts to get better. And all those challenges just become life lessons. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening and tuning into this episode of THI. I hope everybody listening and all the viewers got something out of it. Feel free to share, like, and comment in the comment section. If you have any inquiries, follow us up on our email. Thank you.